The smell hits first. Burning rubber, scorched steel, and something else, something organic that smoke can't fully mask. Through the haze of a Belgian forest clearing, December 1944, a Sherman tank sits motionless, its turret twisted at an unnatural angle. 30 meters away, a German Panther lies on its side like a dying animal, track blown, oil pooling beneath it in dark mirrors. The Panther was faster, heavier, more powerful. Its 75mm gun could punch through a Sherman's armor at distances where American crews couldn't even see their enemy. German engineering at its peak, sloped armor, superior optics, a diesel engine that purred like precision itself. The Americans knew this. Every tank commander briefed before deployment understood the math. In a direct engagement, the Panther wins. But the Sherman is still here. 3 more sit behind it, engines idling, forming a loose semicircle around the destroyed German tank. Their crews are outside now, silent, watching smoke rise from both machines. One American loader is 19 years old. He's shaking. Not from fear, that came earlier, during the 30 seconds of chaos that decided everything. Now it's something else. The realization that he's alive when probability said otherwise. The German crew didn't make it out. Historians would later call the Sherman a death trap. Veterans would use harsher words. German tank commanders mocked its design in captured intelligence reports. Too tall, under-armored, equipped with a gun that bounced rounds off Panther frontal plates like pebbles off castle walls. They called it the Ronson, after the cigarette lighter, because it lit up so easily. American crews called it the Zippo. Dark humor born from darker truths. Yet across France, Belgium, and Germany, in forests and fields and ruined towns, Shermans kept appearing. For every one destroyed, 2 more rolled forward. When Panthers broke down, and they did, often, catastrophically, Shermans were repaired and back in action within hours. German factories struggled to replace losses while American production lines operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, churning out tanks like newspapers. This is the story of how the worst became the best by simply refusing to stop. How industrial might overcame tactical perfection. How a tank mocked by its enemies and feared by its own crews became the iron backbone of Allied victory, not through superior engineering, but through something the Germans never fully understood until it was far too late. Sometimes, history isn't decided by who builds the better weapon. Sometimes, it's decided by who can keep building. The year is 1940, and America isn't ready for war. While German panzers roll through France with mechanical precision, the United States Army operates tanks that would look obsolete to anyone who'd witnessed the Wehrmacht blitzkrieg. The M3 Lee, an awkward design with a hull-mounted gun and a turret that looks like an afterthought, represents America's main battle tank. It's the best they have. It isn't nearly enough. American military planners know this. Intelligence reports from Europe paint a terrifying picture. German armor moves faster, hits harder, and operates with tactical sophistication that makes pre-war American doctrine look quaint. The Panzer III and IV have already proven themselves in Poland and France. Rumors circulate about heavier designs in development, machines that will make current models look like training vehicles. The United States needs a tank. Quickly. Something that can be produced in massive numbers, shipped across an ocean, and operated by crews with minimal training. Something that won't break down every 50 miles or require specialized maintenance that field mechanics can't provide. Not the best tank. There isn't time for perfection. They need a good enough tank that won't stop coming. The M4 Sherman emerges from this pragmatism. Designed in 1941, it embodies American industrial philosophy: standardization, reliability, ease of manufacture. 5 major companies would eventually produce Shermans, along with thousands of subcontractors. The design allows for parts interchangeability. A transmission from a Chrysler-built Sherman fits perfectly into a Ford model. This seems boring, even uninspired, especially compared to German engineering's pursuit of tactical superiority. But it's revolutionary in ways that won't become apparent until thousands of these machines are scattered across multiple continents, far from home factories, kept running by mechanics who learned their trade on tractors. The Sherman stands 9 feet tall, a rolling target by European standards where tank battles often occur at ranges under 1,000 yards. Its 75mm gun, while adequate against early war German armor, will struggle against the heavier tanks coming. Its armor, sloped but relatively thin, can be penetrated by German guns at distances where American crews can barely see their opponents. Everything about it screams compromise. German intelligence officers, examining captured Shermans in North Africa, write dismissive reports. The design philosophy baffles them. Why build something so obviously inferior when you know superior enemy tanks exist? Where's the innovation? The pursuit of tactical advantage? One captured Wehrmacht document describes the Sherman as adequate for infantry support but unsuitable for tank versus tank combat. Another notes its height makes it exceptionally vulnerable in the bocage terrain of Normandy. They're not wrong. These criticisms are accurate. The Sherman is inferior in nearly every measurable combat statistic. German tankers develop tactics specifically designed to exploit these weaknesses. Engage at long range, target the tall profile, avoid situations where numbers matter more than individual superiority. What German analysts miss is context. They evaluate the Sherman as they would evaluate a Panther or Tiger, as a weapon designed to win individual engagements through superior performance. They don't see it as a component in a larger industrial system. They don't account for the economics of replacement, the logistics of maintenance, or the strategic calculus of accepting tolerable losses while maintaining overwhelming presence. The Sherman isn't designed to be better. It's designed to be everywhere, always, no matter what. By 1945, America will have produced nearly 50,000 Shermans. Germany will produce approximately 6,000 Panthers and fewer than 1,500 Tigers. These numbers seem like statistics now, sanitized by history. But on frozen Belgian roads, in Norman hedgerows, across Italian mountain passes, numbers become something more visceral. They become inevitability. The Germans are about to learn an expensive lesson. Sometimes the weapon that can be everywhere defeats the weapon that can win anywhere. North Africa, November 1942. The first Shermans arrive in theater during Operation Torch, and American crews get their first taste of combat against an enemy who's been refining armored warfare for 3 years. The learning curve is steep, written in burning metal and lives that end before men fully understand why. Lieutenant David Cole commands a Sherman in the 1st Armored Division. His crew has trained for 8 months stateside, good training by American standards, but they've never faced an enemy who shoots back with purpose. Their first engagement happens at dawn near Kasserine Pass. A German Panzer IV appears at roughly 800 yards, hull down behind a low ridge. Cole's gunner fires first, hits the target, watches the round bounce off sloped armor like a stone skipping on water. The German doesn't miss. Cole's Sherman takes a penetrating hit to the upper hull. The interior fills with molten metal fragments traveling at supersonic velocity. The driver dies instantly. Cole and his gunner bail out through hatches, uniforms smoking, ears ringing from overpressure. They watch their tank burn from a ditch 30 yards away. The entire engagement lasted 14 seconds. This scene repeats across North Africa with variations. American crews discover what German intelligence already knows. Their tanks are outmatched individually. The 75mm gun requires near-perfect shot placement to penetrate German frontal armor. German guns don't require such precision. A Panzer IV can engage Shermans at ranges where American optics struggle to identify targets. When Tigers appear, rarely, but memorably, the psychological impact is devastating. Yet something unexpected happens. American tanks keep coming. German commanders win tactical victories but can't translate them into operational success. They destroy 5 Shermans, and 7 appear the next day. Their own losses, smaller numerically, can't be replaced at anything approaching the same rate. A Panzer IV knocked out in Tunisia might wait weeks for spare parts shipped from Germany. A Sherman damaged in the same engagement often returns to action within 48 hours, repaired by mobile maintenance units carrying standardized parts that fit any Sherman variant. The Americans are learning, too. Painful lessons purchased with lives, but lessons nonetheless. Crews develop tactics that mitigate their disadvantages, engage from multiple angles simultaneously, use superior numbers to force German tanks into positions where their armor advantages matter less, exploit the Sherman's faster turret traverse to win close-range engagements. They learn to move constantly, to never expose themselves in static positions where German gunnery superiority becomes decisive. Lieutenant Cole, recovered from his injuries, returns to combat in February 1943 with a new tank and a revised understanding of his equipment. "We can't fight them the way they fight us," he writes in a letter home. "We have to make them fight our kind of battle. Make them move, make them turn, make them expose themselves. Then we win with numbers." It's not inspiring. There's no glory in acknowledging your weapon is inferior and your survival depends on having more friends than the enemy can kill. But it's true, and truth has a way of mattering more than pride when metal is flying. By May 1943, when German forces evacuate North Africa, American armored divisions have lost hundreds of tanks. But they've gained something invaluable: operational experience, tactical doctrine adapted to their equipment's realities, and confidence that they can absorb losses and continue functioning. The Sherman has proven itself not as a superior weapon but as an adequate one that keeps appearing, keeps fighting, keeps advancing even when individual battles go badly. German after-action reports note this with growing concern. One Wehrmacht intelligence assessment from March 1943 observes, American armored forces demonstrate poor tactical sophistication but recover from defeats with alarming speed. Tank losses that would cripple a Panzer division seem to have minimal operational impact. This suggests either massive production capacity or complete disregard for casualty rates. Possibly both. They're starting to understand. Not fully, not yet, but the shape of the problem is becoming visible. The Americans aren't trying to build better tanks. They're building a system that makes individual tank quality less relevant. It's alien to German military thinking, which venerates technological superiority and tactical excellence. The idea that adequate equipment in overwhelming quantity might defeat superior equipment in limited numbers violates assumptions that have defined Wehrmacht doctrine since Poland. But assumptions don't stop shells. And in Sicily, where American forces will land in July 1943, thousands more Shermans are already being loaded onto transport ships. Behind them, American factories are producing more, hundreds per month, soon to be thousands. The math is becoming inescapable. German Panzer crews joke darkly about it in letters and conversations. "I can defeat 10 Shermans. But there's always an 11th. They don't realize yet that the 11th Sherman is the entire point. To understand why the Sherman exists as it does, you must first understand the monster it was designed to fight, and the industrial philosophy that created it. The story begins not in 1941 when the Sherman was designed, but in 1933 when Hitler assumed power and began transforming Germany into a military state built around a single, terrifying idea: that modern war would be decided by speed, shock, and technological superiority concentrated at decisive points. German armor doctrine emerged from this philosophy. The Panzer wasn't merely a weapon, it was the sharp point of a spear designed to punch through enemy lines, creating chaos in rear areas while infantry followed to consolidate gains. This required tanks that could move fast, hit hard, and survive enemy fire long enough to exploit breakthrough moments. Quality mattered more than quantity because the entire system depended on preserving offensive momentum. By 1941, this doctrine had conquered Poland in weeks, France in months, and pushed deep into Soviet territory with victories that shocked the world. The Panzer III and IV proved their worth repeatedly. German engineers, confident in their success, began designing even more capable machines. The Panther, with its revolutionary sloped armor and powerful long-barreled 75mm gun. The Tiger, a 60-ton fortress on tracks armed with a legendary 88mm gun that could destroy any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 yards. These weren't merely improved tanks. They were masterpieces of engineering, complex, sophisticated, expensive. A single Tiger required 300,000 man-hours to produce. Its transmission, a marvel of German engineering, was also a maintenance nightmare requiring specialized training and tools. The Panther's engine, powerful but temperamental, demanded constant attention from experienced mechanics. Both tanks used non-interchangeable parts specific to their models, sometimes to individual production batches. This was precision engineering taken to its logical extreme. Each tank was built to dominate any opponent it encountered. And they did, when they worked, when they had fuel, when spare parts were available, when crews could maintain them properly. On paper, they were unstoppable. In reality, They were fragile in ways that didn't appear in specification sheets. Few people today realize that Germany's most advanced tanks often spent more time broken down than operational. A 1944 report from Panzer Lehr Division noted that only 30% of their Panthers were combat-ready on any given day, not due to battle damage, but mechanical failure. Tigers were worse. Some units reported operational readiness below 20%. The complexity that made them formidable also made them unreliable. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, America was building something entirely different. Not weapons, but a weapons system. The Sherman's genius wasn't in its design. It was in how that design integrated with industrial capacity, logistical infrastructure, and strategic thinking that viewed individual tanks as disposable components in a larger machine. American factories in Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Chicago converted automobile production lines to tank manufacture. The skills weren't that different: assembly line work, metal fabrication, engine production. Workers who built cars before the war now built tanks, using similar techniques and tools. This wasn't accidental. The Sherman was designed to be manufacturable using existing industrial capacity and workforce skills. Every design decision prioritized production efficiency. Cast hull components instead of welded plates, a radial aircraft engine already in mass production, a suspension system based on proven agricultural equipment principles. The result was a tank that could be built quickly by relatively unskilled workers in factories scattered across the United States, using supply chains that didn't require specialized components from single-source suppliers. When a Sherman needed a new transmission, any transmission from any Sherman would work. When crews needed training, the mechanical simplicity meant they could learn maintenance procedures in weeks rather than months. By 1943, American production reached 500 Shermans per month. By 1944, it exceeded 2,000 monthly. Germany, despite massive investment in its war industry, never produced more than 300 Panthers in a single month. The disparity wasn't just numerical, it was philosophical. Germans built tanks to win battles. Americans built tanks to win a war. The logistics amplified this advantage exponentially. Shermans shipped to Europe came with complete maintenance packages, spare parts, replacement engines, even extra road wheels and tracks. Mobile maintenance units could rebuild a damaged Sherman in days using standardized components. The same tank destroyed on Monday might return to combat the following week with a new turret, new engine, new crew. Functionally a different machine, but operationally the same asset. German tanks received no such support. As the war progressed and Allied bombing devastated German industry, spare parts became scarce, then rare, then nearly impossible to obtain. Panthers sat immobilized not from battle damage but because a single broken component, often something as simple as a track link or fuel pump, couldn't be replaced. These technological marvels, superior in every measurable way to the Sherman, became expensive steel sculptures decorating European roadsides. The irony is almost poetic. German engineering achieved exactly what it set out to create: tanks that were individually superior to anything opponents fielded. What they failed to account for was that individual superiority becomes strategically irrelevant when you can't field enough tanks, can't maintain the ones you have, and can't replace losses at rates that match attrition. The Sherman wasn't designed to be the best tank. It was designed to be the last tank still fighting after everyone else had broken down, run out of fuel, or waited months for replacement parts that would never arrive. That might be the only victory condition that actually matters. June 6, 1944. Normandy beaches. The largest amphibious invasion in human history, and Shermans are swimming ashore through chaos. Many don't make it, drowned in deep water, destroyed by German artillery, bogged in sand. But enough survive. Always, enough survive. By nightfall, Allied forces have established precarious footholds on 5 beaches, and Sherman tanks are inland, pushing through hedgerows toward objectives that seem impossibly distant. The bocage country of Normandy becomes a nightmare specifically designed to negate every American advantage. The ancient hedgerows, dense earthen banks topped with vegetation, dividing fields into small compartments, create a claustrophobic maze where visibility drops to dozens of yards. Long-range engagements become impossible. Numerical superiority means little when only 1 or 2 tanks can engage simultaneously. The Sherman's height, already a liability, becomes deadly here. German tanks hull down behind hedgerows can see Sherman turrets approaching before American crews spot anything. German defenders exploit this ruthlessly. Panzer IVs and Panthers position themselves at hedgerow intersections, creating kill zones. A single German tank can hold up an entire American column, destroying lead vehicles and trapping the rest. American tank losses in Normandy's first weeks are staggering. Hundreds of Shermans burning in Norman fields, crews dead or horribly burned, tactical advances measured in yards purchased with armor and lives. Wehrmacht reports from June and July 1944 read confidently. They're winning the tactical fight. Every engagement ratio favors German armor. One SS Panzer commander notes with satisfaction, American tank tactics remain predictable and their equipment inferior. We destroy 4 and 5 of their tanks for each of our losses. This is sustainable for us. It cannot be sustainable for them. He's wrong. It's exactly sustainable for the Americans, and absolutely unsustainable for Germany. What German commanders can't see from their tactical perspectives is the strategic picture developing around them. While they're winning engagements in Normandy, American factories are producing more Shermans than Germany is producing all tank types combined. While German repair depots struggle with parts shortages and damaged Panthers waiting weeks for maintenance, American mobile workshops are getting Shermans back into action within days. The Germans are winning battles while slowly, inevitably, losing the campaign. The revelation comes not in a single dramatic moment, but as an accumulating weight that eventually becomes impossible to ignore. By late July, German armored units in Normandy report tank strength at 40 to 60% of authorized levels, not from battle losses alone, but from mechanical breakdowns they can't repair. Meanwhile, American armored divisions that took heavy losses in June are back to full strength, sometimes exceeding their authorized tank numbers. A captured German lieutenant, interrogated in early August, provides an account that reveals the psychological dimension of this industrial disparity. We would destroy their tanks, sometimes 5 or 6 in a single ambush. We'd count them burning and feel like we'd won something important. Then the next day, more would appear. Different tanks, different crews, but functionally the same force. We started to realize we weren't fighting an army. We were fighting a factory that happened to have an army attached. The mathematics become inescapable. Germany produced approximately 6,000 Panthers and fewer than 1,500 Tigers during the entire war. By August 1944, the United States had already shipped over 20,000 Shermans to Europe, with thousands more arriving monthly. Even with a 5-to-1 loss ratio, which represented German tactical superiority at its peak, American armored strength would continue growing while German strength diminished. But the numbers tell only part of the story. The psychological impact matters more. German tank crews begin each engagement knowing they might win the battle but are definitely losing the war. American crews, conversely, develop a grim confidence. They might die today, but the mission will succeed because someone in an identical tank will finish what they started. This isn't morale in any traditional sense. American tankers don't love their Shermans. Most hate them, fear them, resent their inadequacy. But they trust the system. They trust that if they're killed, they'll be replaced. If their tank is destroyed, another will arrive. If they survive, spare parts will keep them running. This is a new kind of battlefield confidence, built not on equipment superiority but on industrial certainty. German tank Ace Otto Carius, who destroyed over 150 Allied tanks during the war, wrote in his memoir, "We were hunting individual prey while being devoured by a swarm." Every victory felt more meaningless because victory itself had become strategically irrelevant. The Americans understood something we didn't. Wars aren't won by superior soldiers or superior equipment. They're won by superior logistics applied long enough. By mid-August 1944, the German front in Normandy collapses, not because they ran out of fighting spirit or tactical skill, but because they ran out of functional tanks, fuel to move them, and replacement crews to man them. The superior weapon had finally lost to the adequate weapon that never stopped arriving. The mockery was over. The realization had come. But for Germany, it had come far too late to matter. December 16, 1944. The Ardennes forest. Snow covers the ground. Morning mist hangs between trees like smoke. Then, thunder. Engines roaring. the distinctive deep growl of German armor moving in numbers not seen since 1941. Operation Wacht am Rhein, Hitler's final desperate gamble to split Allied armies and capture Antwerp, reversing Germany's collapsing strategic position. German Panzer divisions, reconstituted, refitted, given priority for fuel and ammunition that's desperately scarce elsewhere, smash into thinly held American lines. Tiger IIs, the most powerful tanks on Earth, lead columns through freezing forests. Panthers follow, engines straining but functioning, crews determined to prove that German tactical superiority still matters. The initial assault is devastating. American units, caught completely by surprise, fall back in confusion. Some disintegrate entirely. For 72 hours, it looks like German confidence might be justified. Entire American regiments are surrounded. Key road junctions fall to German armor moving faster than Allied intelligence predicted possible. In that window, the Wehrmacht demonstrates what it's always been capable of: violent, sophisticated breakthrough operations that shatter defensive positions through shock and tactical excellence. But the window closes. American response doesn't come from brilliant generalship or tactical innovation. It comes from the same industrial logic that's defined the entire campaign. Damaged Shermans are repaired overnight. Destroyed units are reconstituted with replacement tanks that arrive by rail and road from depots stocked beyond any German calculation. Fuel shortages that would cripple Wehrmacht operations never materialize because American supply chains function with relentless efficiency. The Battle of the Bulge becomes a grotesque demonstration of resource disparity compressed into time and space. German spearheads advance until they simply stop, not because they're beaten tactically, but because they run out of fuel. Tigers and Panthers, mechanical marvels capable of destroying any tank they encounter, sit immobilized on Belgian roads while American Shermans maneuver around them. Some German crews abandon their tanks and continue fighting as infantry, leaving millions of Reichsmarks worth of engineering to rust. At Bastogne, surrounded American forces hold partly through courage but mostly because Sherman tanks and tank destroyers keep arriving faster than Germans can eliminate them. General McAuliffe's famous reply to German surrender demands, "Nuts," becomes legend, but the real answer is more prosaic. He had tanks, the Germans increasingly didn't, and time favored whoever could replace losses faster. The climax comes not in a single dramatic engagement, but in the slow, grinding realization that spreads through German ranks during late December and early January. They've achieved local victories. They've demonstrated tactical superiority repeatedly. They've destroyed hundreds of American tanks. None of it matters. American armor strength in the Ardennes is higher in January 1945 than it was in December 1944, despite thousands of casualties. German strength is a fraction of what it started with, and there are no replacements coming. One Panther crewman's diary, recovered after the war, captures the psychological moment: "We destroyed 9 American tanks today. A complete victory by any measure. Tonight we received orders to retreat because we have no fuel and no replacement tanks for the 3 we lost. The Americans will have 9 new tanks by tomorrow. We will have nothing. This is how we lose, by winning battles that change nothing." The sensory reality of collapse. Engines falling silent not from battle damage but fuel exhaustion. Panther transmissions seizing mid-retreat, stranding tanks that crews must destroy to prevent capture. Tiger IIs, designed to dominate any battlefield, blown up by their own crews because they can't be moved and won't be recovered. The sound changes from armor warfare, gunfire, explosions, engines, to silence punctuated by demolition charges as Germans destroy what they can't keep. American tanks keep moving forward. Not dramatically, not with tactical elegance, but with relentless momentum that doesn't depend on any individual unit's survival. Sherman after Sherman after Sherman, churning through snow, bypassing German strongpoints, cutting supply lines, compressing the bulge back into German-held territory. By January 25, 1945, the Battle of the Bulge is over. Germany's last major offensive has failed. The cost in American lives and equipment is substantial. Nearly 20,000 killed, over 600 tanks destroyed. But American armored strength is already recovering. German armored strength never will. The Wehrmacht has demonstrated, one final time, that German tanks are superior to Shermans in almost every measurable way. They've proven that German crews and tactics can achieve remarkable local victories even when surrounded and outnumbered. They've shown that tactical excellence and technological sophistication matter. And then they've lost anyway, decisively, because none of those advantages mean anything when your enemy can absorb losses you can't match, replace equipment you can't replace, and keep fighting with industrial capacity you can't counter. The mockery is finished. The engineers who dismissed the Sherman's design, the tacticians who calculated favorable engagement ratios, the commanders who believed quality could defeat quantity, all have discovered the limit of their assumptions. The Sherman wasn't supposed to be better. It was supposed to be enough. And enough, consistently applied with overwhelming industrial support, has proven to be everything. The engines fall silent in the Ardennes. But in the distance, from the west, more engines approach. Always, more engines. The guns fall silent in May 1945. Across Europe, thousands of Sherman tanks sit motionless, some battle-damaged, most simply waiting for orders that won't come. Their crews, exhausted, traumatized, grateful to be alive, begin the strange transition from warriors to occupiers. The machines that carried them through France, Belgium, and Germany begin their own transformation from weapons to relics. Walk through a German tank depot in June 1945 and you'll find a mechanical graveyard. Panthers stripped for parts, Tigers cannibalized to keep a few running for testing purposes, Panzer IVs sitting exactly where they were abandoned when fuel ran out or transmissions failed. Many show no battle damage. They simply stopped working, and there was nothing left to fix them with. Superior engineering, rendered into junk by the collapse of the industrial system that created it. The contrast with American armor is striking. Sherman maintenance depots buzz with activity even after victory, repairing and refurbishing tanks for occupation duty or shipment to the Pacific Theater. The same standardization and simplicity that made Shermans inferior in combat makes them perfect for peace. Any mechanic can maintain them. Parts remain plentiful. They continue functioning not because they're superior machines, but because the system supporting them hasn't collapsed. American tankers don't remember their Shermans fondly. Veterans' accounts are filled with bitterness about equipment they believed inadequate, about friends who died in machines that couldn't protect them, about the psychological burden of knowing your tank was worse than the enemy's. One veteran, interviewed decades later, speaks with anger still raw. They gave us death traps and told us to win a war. And we did. But that doesn't mean the tanks were good. It means we were expendable, and there were more of us than there were of them. He's not wrong. The Sherman's victory was built on acceptable losses, acceptable to planners who never sat in them, acceptable only in hindsight when victory justifies costs. Over 8,000 Shermans were destroyed in combat during the European campaign. Approximately 50,000 American tank crewmen became casualties, killed, wounded, or captured. These numbers represent real humans who climbed into machines they knew were inadequate and fought anyway because someone had to. German veterans carry different trauma. They believed in their equipment's superiority, trusted in engineering excellence and tactical training, and discovered that none of it mattered strategically. One former Panther commander describes the psychological dissolution. We won every battle and lost the war. I destroyed 14 American tanks personally. I was good at my job. But I was part of a system that couldn't win, designed by people who confused tactical excellence with strategic wisdom. We were craftsmen trying to defeat an industrial revolution. The physical aftermath sprawls across Europe, tens of thousands of destroyed tanks, German and American, slowly rusting in fields or being scrapped for reconstruction efforts. Some Shermans remain in service for decades, sold or given to allied nations, fighting in wars from Korea to the Middle East well into the 1970s. Their design, mocked as obsolete in 1944, proves flexible enough to be upgraded and adapted for conflicts undreamed of when they were built. German armor largely disappears. Panthers and Tigers, too complex and fuel-hungry for post-war armies, are scrapped or preserved as museum pieces. The engineering sophistication that made them formidable also made them unsuitable for anything except the specific circumstances of Wehrmacht doctrine supported by German industrial capacity. Remove that context, and they're just expensive metal. Military analysts, examining the war's lessons, struggle with uncomfortable conclusions. The Sherman's victory challenges fundamental assumptions about military equipment. It suggests that good enough, consistently applied, can defeat excellent, inconsistently available. It implies that industrial capacity and logistics matter more than engineering sophistication. These lessons feel almost heretical to military cultures that venerate technological superiority and tactical excellence. But the evidence is overwhelming. By war's end, American factories had produced roughly 50,000 Shermans. They equipped not just American forces but British, Canadian, Free French, Polish, and Soviet units. They fought on every front, in every climate, against every opponent. Their crews often hated them, but the machines kept running, kept fighting, kept appearing in numbers that made individual inadequacy strategically irrelevant. In the end, that's the Sherman's epitaph: not beloved, not superior, but sufficient. Sufficient when it mattered, where it mattered, as many times as necessary. Wars aren't won by perfect weapons. They're won by adequate weapons that never stop arriving. Sometimes, that's the only perfection that matters. So what does it mean, this story of the tank that won by being worse? What universal truth echoes beyond the specific history of the Sherman and the Panzer, beyond even World War II itself? The answer reaches deeper than military hardware, touching something fundamental about how we think about competition, excellence, and victory itself. We worship optimization. Our culture venerates the best product, the most elegant solution, the superior design that outperforms competitors through inherent excellence. We tell stories about innovators who changed everything through brilliant insight, about underdogs who won through being better. The Sherman story challenges this narrative at its foundation. It won by being adequate in sustainable ways rather than excellent in unsustainable ways. Consider the German engineers who mocked the Sherman's design. They weren't wrong in their assessment. By every technical metric they valued, armor thickness, gun penetration, tactical mobility, their tanks were superior. Their mistake wasn't in their engineering but in their frame of reference. They optimized for battle when they needed to optimize for war. They created masterpieces when they needed to create a production line. They achieved perfection in the wrong dimensions. This pattern repeats throughout history, in contexts far beyond warfare. The VHS format defeated technically superior Betamax through availability and ecosystem support. McDonald's doesn't serve the best hamburger, but serves adequate hamburgers everywhere, reliably, at prices that make consistency more valuable than quality. Amazon didn't start by being the best at anything. It became dominant by being good enough at everything, reliably, at scale. The lesson isn't that quality doesn't matter. It's that quality exists within systems, and the system often matters more than individual components. A magnificent weapon that can't be maintained is worse than an adequate weapon that never stops working. A brilliant strategy that requires perfect execution fails against a decent strategy that allows for mistakes. Excellence that can't be sustained loses to adequacy that never quits. American tank crews who climbed into Shermans knowing they were outmatched understood something their commanders maybe didn't fully articulate. They weren't fighting as individuals, they were fighting as components in a larger machine. Their survival depended not on having the best tank, but on being part of a system that kept fighting regardless of individual outcomes. This is psychologically harsh but strategically decisive. Modern military doctrine still grapples with this tension. The United States continues developing exquisite weapons, stealth fighters costing hundreds of millions each, aircraft carriers as large as small towns. These weapons dominate any battlefield they appear on. But they're few in number, expensive to maintain, irreplaceable in practical time frames. Are they Shermans or Panthers? The answer might depend on which war we're actually fighting versus which war we're preparing for. The deeper question haunts anyone who studies the Sherman story. What are we optimizing for in our own lives and work? Are we pursuing excellence in ways that make us fragile, or adequacy in ways that make us resilient? Are we the Panther, magnificent but dependent on perfect conditions, or the Sherman, humble but functional regardless of circumstances? There's no single right answer, but the question itself deserves consideration. If you've read this far, you're someone who values forgotten truths and complex lessons over simple narratives. You understand that history's most important stories often contradict our instincts about how success works. Keep that perspective alive. Share these uncomfortable insights. Question assumptions about excellence and superiority and what victory actually requires. The Sherman story matters not because it glorifies American industrial might or denigrates German engineering. It matters because it reveals a truth about competition, resources, and sustainability that applies far beyond its historical context. Sometimes the weapon that wins isn't the one that performs best, it's the one that keeps performing long after better weapons have stopped. Across Europe, in fields and forests where this truth was written in steel and blood, the engines are silent now. Rust reclaims both Panther and Sherman, the superior and the adequate, equalizing them in decay. But the lesson remains, sharp as the day it was learned. Excellence that breaks is inferior to adequacy that endures. The only battle that matters is the last one you're still fighting when everyone else has stopped. The engines are silent still, but their echo shapes everything that comes after.